You know what they say, cash is king. Everyone likes to say it. I see that term getting thrown around all the time. But let me tell you, cash is not king. Cash flow is king. But what is cash flow? Okay, let's break it down because I know a lot of people don't really have a firm understanding of what cash flow really is. So cash flow is the movement of money. And sorry, I kind of went straight into this episode. Forgive me. I just love cash flow so much, I guess. Anyway, cash flow is the movement of money in and out of your business. Basically, it's how much cash you actually have on hand to spend. It's not about what you've invoiced or what you're owed. It's about what's physically sitting in your bank account right now. So even if you've got $50,000 in outstanding invoices, if you've only got $2,000 in the bank and a $5,000 payroll due on Monday, you've got a cash flow problem. In a cleaning business, cash flow gets tight because you might pay your team weekly like we do. You might even pay them fortnightly, but then you've got your commercial clients or your builders cleans that you do or the industrial cleans that you do, and they might pay monthly or even quarterly. And I've even heard of some people not getting paid for up to 9 months that do government tenders and builders cleans. So that gap is where a lot of business owners get stuck. They're profitable, but they're still broke because the money hasn't landed yet. And managing cash flow is all about bridging that timing gap so you're never caught short. It's really easy to get boggled down in like the P&L and just seeing the result of everything you've invoiced and like, sending out $150,000 a month worth of invoices and then looking at that and being like, oh, we've made $150K this month. No, what have you actually collected? What is the cash collected? You may have heard that term kind of thrown out there with lots of other online business owners. They always talk about we made, this much amount cash collected this month. And that's what really matters. It's not about what you invoice. It's about the cash that you collect at the end of the day. And I had to learn this the hard way. Don't think that I'm so high and mighty that I didn't know about this when I started. There's lots of things I would have done differently if I had my time over. I probably wouldn't have gone with weekly payroll. Weekly payroll has been one of the biggest killers of my cash flow. Just staggering the payroll and delaying it by 1 week makes all the difference. I would have changed the payroll to be from Monday to a Thursday, and I would have made it fortnightly. Anyway, we won't get into that right now, but what I want to do in this episode is I want to break down 3 easy strategies or easy tips that you can use right now to improve your cash flow in your business. Maybe cash flow is not a concern to you right now. Maybe you're just a solo cleaner or you haven't even started a business, but I'm telling you, cash flow always becomes a problem later on. It's inevitable with growth, and it's a sign of growth. When you start to encounter cash flow constraints, that's how you know you're growing. So even if you're not at the stage where this is a bother to you right now, it's going to become a problem. So listen up. Let's break down these 3 strategies. So first of all, let's break down the numbers, and I'll give you like an example that is closely related to my business. So like in my business, we run payroll every Monday, and we have a bunch of commercial contracts that we have, and we invoice them, and they don't get paid for up to 60 to 90 days. We clean for a university, and it's an international university, and they take up to 120 days to pay. It's pretty insane. The money's great. It's guaranteed to come, but it does take a long time to come. So that is a problem. But anyway, we're running payroll every week, and we've got a bunch of commercial invoices that aren't getting paid for up to 90 days. So we're essentially a bank for our clients. We're fronting the labor and the product costs for weeks on end without getting paid. And the math is pretty scary when you start to break it down. So let's just say you run a team of 10 cleaners, and the average wage is like $500 per cleaner per week. So your weekly payroll is $5,000. Let's just say you have one commercial client that owes you $15,000, but they take 60 days or 8.5 weeks to pay. So let's just say you run payroll for 9 weeks without getting paid by that particular client. So you're forking out about, $45,000 in payroll, but you won't receive that $15,000 for 8.5 weeks. So that's, like a $30,000-ish shortfall in the meantime. You can see how quickly that adds up. That's just one client. That would just be one invoice. And think about it through this context. I've got, at any given time, about 140 outstanding invoices. So it does add up, and it does become a problem. And for the longest time, my only real solution to this was to keep a lot of cash in the bank. I would have a cash reserve of like $100,000 just sitting there in the bank, not doing anything, just because I knew I would have these cash flow issues. I knew I needed to run payroll. And, $100,000 seems like a lot of money to just sit there in cash, but that's realistically like 5 weeks of payroll. That's it. Like, it's really not a lot of money. And so I had it all wrong. I never paid myself a salary or took dividends. So I was like, whatever, it's fine. I'll just keep all this money in the bank. But then I really thought about it. I was like, where am I taking this business? What am I going to do with this? This problem is only going to get bigger as I get bigger. I can't just keep pushing it to the side and hoping that it goes away with more growth, and just like hoping that, the business gets to the point where, like, sure, I'm only taking 2% of the profit, but that 2% is going to be so big that it's not going to bother me, Anyway, I just had the wrong mindset towards it, and it was like this big hairy beast that I didn't want to take on. But so that is the issue. We don't want to be keeping all this money in the bank that we could be leveraging for other business investments. We could be putting into equipment. We could be taking out for ourselves, because obviously as a business owner, we want to get paid as well. So you don't want to be keeping money in the bank. So what do you do? What can you do about this cash flow issue? I always say to people, use the bank if you can. Use the bank's money. Don't use your own money if you can avoid it. Use someone else's money always. Leverage what is already there, something that doesn't have to come from you. So the easiest way to have a bit of a buffer, to buy yourself a bit of breathing room and a bit of runway, is to have what's called a bank overdraft. Now, a bank overdraft is essentially a line of credit that just kind of sits there by the wayside that you can dip into if you ever go below zero in your bank account. And you pay a very, very small fee per year to have this. So we have an overdraft in our bank account that we've never used. We've had it for 2 years. We pay $90 a year to have, I think it's a $60,000 overdraft. So if we go below $0 in our bank account, let's just say, I don't know, we have a freak couple of months, we don't get paid, but we're still paying our staff, and we go like negative $30,000 in the bank. That just dips into our overdraft, and we essentially pay that back to the bank as more money starts to come in. And it's paid at a pretty reasonable interest rate. Don't quote me, I think it's like 10 to 14%. And obviously you're not going to be paying that off forever. That money will come back pretty quickly, and that interest rate isn't really going to hit you too hard. So having an overdraft, which is basically a line of credit, is a really good way to just give yourself a bit of a buffer so that if you go below zero, it's not going to be the end of the world, and you can move forward with your business operations without any concern of cash flow. So that's probably the easiest way you can do it. You can, if you're in one of the big banks, like if you're with, one of the big four, like CommBank, ANZ, NAB, all that, you can just go in there now and you can search for overdraft, and you can apply for an overdraft in a couple of minutes and get approved. It's really handy to have, and it's a great peace of mind just having that there. Like I said, I've had it for 2 years. I've never had to use it, which is good, but it's also great to just have that there and know that if we ever did need to fall back on it, it is there. So that's tip number one, I would say, for managing cash flow, is set up a bank overdraft. Very inexpensive, especially if you never dip into it. Like I said, $90 a year is what I pay to have access to $60,000 if I ever need it. So, you can go negative by a few $1,000s in your account to cover payroll and to pay off vendors and supply costs and equipment, and then just catch back up when the invoices get paid. So if it's only a few $1,000s, you're not going to be paying a huge amount of money in interest. It's going to be a little bit. It's not like you're paying it off every year. Once that money comes back in, the bank will just automatically kind of take the interest out of that. And yeah, it's a really good system. So tip number two, which is a bit more out there, it's kind of a bigger picture strategy for bigger businesses. And this is going to be really important for companies that primarily do high ticket cleans, that have big contracts, that certainly don't do residential, but do big builders cleans, big office buildings and things like that, where the invoice amount is tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's called invoice factoring or invoice financing. So for example, you might have $100,000 in unpaid invoices. You can go to a finance provider and they might let you borrow up to 90% of the invoice value. So let's just say they let you borrow, let's go less than that. Maybe they let you borrow up to 80% of the invoice value. So you got $100,000 outstanding that hasn't been paid yet. You can go to a financer and you can borrow $80,000 against the value of your outstanding invoices. You pay a small fee of like 2 to 5%, and then when the invoice gets paid, they collect and give you the rest minus the fee. So it is a bit expensive. Obviously, if we're talking about a 5% fee, and that's a pretty conservative number, it might be less, it might be maybe a little bit more. That can add up. But the good thing about this is you can just kind of sell that cost onto the customer. You can just tax that on to your invoices, and you can structure that in to your pricing, so it's not going to be an issue. And yeah, it's not, again, like it's not a lot of money to pay. If you're paying 2% on a $100,000 invoice, that's only $2,000, and it means you get access to that cash straight away. And it doesn't mean you would have to do it for all of your invoices. You would just do it for maybe one or two big ones so that you have that cash on hand to play with while you're waiting. So that's called invoice factoring, or maybe more commonly known in Australia as invoice financing, where you can borrow 80 to 90% of the invoice value. And yeah, the finance company or the finance broker or whoever's doing it, maybe even the bank, they just take a small fee, 2 to 5% usually. And it's another great way to manage cash flow because you can get access to that cash straight away. So you can actually use it for your operations and paying staff and all that stuff. And you won't have to be kept up at night worrying about what if you can't make payroll? What if you can't meet these big suppliers' demands and pay off whatever you need to and your vehicles and all that. So that's great. Invoice factoring, invoice financing, really good method, especially if you're doing primarily big commercial stuff, big builders, cleans, big projects, all that stuff. So number 3, and probably the easiest thing you can do, and even if you're not someone that has cash flow issues or you're a bigger business, I would implore you to do this right now. And that is to get a business credit card, and better yet, a business rewards credit card. So you can rack up whatever you want, frequent flyer points, Amex points, velocity points, and yeah, you can get some nice fringe benefits that aren't actually classified as fringe benefits. So I will draw from my experience. So I had a big cash flow issue with payroll. Like I said, my payroll was in excess of $20,000 a week, and I was not getting paid on time by my vendors. And I was starting to worry because I'd just switched over to a new bank account because I'd rolled over into a proprietary limited company. And for those of you who don't know, when you create a new business structure, like going from a sole trader to PTY Ltd, you have to create new bank accounts. And yeah, cash flow was bad during that transition period. So one thing I did, which was a massive help and had so many more benefits in other ways, which I'll talk about, is to have a business credit card like an Amex. And I used a website called pay.com.au because usually you can't use a credit card to do things like pay payroll, pay the tax office for certain bills, and pay certain suppliers if they don't have credit card merchants and you just have to bank transfer. Pay.com.au allows you to make any transactions that would normally be through BSB or PayID or what have you. They would allow you to use a credit card for that. And what's great about that is it means you can use it for payroll. So I used a rewards Amex credit card to make payroll every week. And with most credit cards, you get like 55, 60 days grace period before you actually have to pay it back. And so imagine what that can do for your cash flow. If you're paying your payroll through this credit card for 60 days, which is like if you're doing weekly payroll, that's 2 months, so 8 weeks. So if you can go 8 weeks and keep up your payroll without actually having to shift the cash from your bank account to the payees, imagine what that does for your cash flow. You've kept, if your payroll is $10,000 a week, you've kept $60,000 in your bank account as working capital and as a buffer for 2 months while you're waiting for invoices to get paid. And then you can pay off the credit card before the interest-free period expires. And you can also rack up points. Like in my case, I racked up a lot of points. I never have to pay for flights ever again because I've run so many things through the business credit card. I've just booked business class flights to LAX return, and that'll be in a few months. So that was like a couple 100,000 points. That was great. I fly business class over East all the time, and yeah, I never have to pay for flights again because I've just racked up so many points from. And like my cleaning supply store, my local supplier for cleaning products and like bin bags and vacuum cleaners and sprays and cloths and everything, they send out a monthly statement, and usually you can only pay that with bank transfer. But I just put it through pay.com.au. It allows you to put their BSB or PayID number into a merchant account, and then you can just pay that using your credit card. And obviously you pay a little bit of a fee. It's like, 3% for Amex or whatever it is. And so, you do a bit of math, you can weigh up the costs for yourself. But for me, the points that I get is one thing. I get a lot of points, and that's great because I like to travel. And if you don't want to travel, you can use it for other stuff. Like Amex points can be used for like literally anything these days. And so it's not only great for that, but it also means cash flow. Like I get much better cash flow out of having this credit card. Like even with my suppliers, even paying my local supply store like $5,000 a month, that's 5,000 extra bucks that I can keep in cash in reserve in my bank account before I have to pay off that credit card. You just have to make sure that you've got good money hygiene, that you're not going overboard with the credit card, and that you realize that, that's not your money. The balance that you see on the credit card, the limit on that credit card, that is not your money. So don't just start using it rapid fire and get all trigger happy with it for anything. Make sure you've got good money hygiene. Make sure you have a good understanding of credit and how that all works. But it can be a really, really good tool for managing cash flow and making it better. It definitely was in my case. It helped me a lot through that transitionary period from going from sole trader to a company. And yeah, it's just cool that I get to rack up points and do all this cool stuff with it. And today I still use rewards credit cards. I've got a few because there's a bunch of different offers where you can sign up and you can get like 200,000 points for, spending $6,000 in 2 months. And like I'm racking up points like crazy. It's pretty fun. I've kind of turned it into a game for myself. And between these three things, you can manage cash flow like a king. And you can really unlock the power in your cleaning business because you're no longer limited and constrained by vendors not paying you, commercial clients not paying you on time. It doesn't matter because you've got these tools, you've got the smarts, and you've got the know-how to combat that. So yeah, that's the message for today. Cash flow is a silent killer in a service business like ours. You can be profitable on paper, like we talked about. Hey, you can look at the P&L and you can see the value of all the invoices that you've sent out over the month, and you can be like, oh, I'm doing great. We grew 20% on last month. But in real life, you can still be broke if you're not managing it properly. So here's a little action list that I've got for you. Number 1, set up a bank overdraft with your bank as a safety net. Number 2, if maybe you're a bit bigger, maybe this is of a concern to you, look into invoice financing if you do a lot of commercial work. And number 3, start using a business credit card with extended terms and link it to a payroll platform like pay.com.au. These small moves can make a huge difference when you hit those tight weeks. And a business credit card, if you don't do anything, just do this. Just get a business credit card. You can even use it to build your own credit if you're a sole trader. It's great for that. And yeah, the points is really fun. If you don't know much about points, if you're not big on collecting points, it's crazy. Like I was, collecting Qantas points through my everyday rewards, like buying stuff at Woolies, and then I'd be excited to get my 1,000 Qantas points every 4 months when I'd meet the $2,000 spend at Woolies. Now I get 100,000 points a month just by running my business because I'm running it through a credit card, and it's insane the possibilities that opens up. And that's, you don't pay any taxes or fringe benefits on that. It's just points that you can use for your own personal stuff, even if it's from the company card. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how true that is. Maybe run that by your accountant first. But if you don't do anything else, just get yourself a business credit card. It's going to be a massive relief on your cash flow, and it's going to open a few more doors for you. So go out there, look for some offers. And with that being said, remember, cash flow is king, especially if you manage it well. So keep that in mind, even if you're not at that stage in your business yet. And I hope you found some value in this episode. So I will be flying to Brisbane in 2 days, and we're going to have a lot of fun over there doing the mold remediation training. So I'll be doing a lot of content there. I'll be making some TikToks talking about what we've learned. I'll hopefully do a podcast with the gang, with Arlene, Scott and Gabby, and Megan from Valley to Beach Forensic Cleaning, and that'll be a whole lot of fun. So yeah, let me know in the present, if you're listening right now when this goes live, send me some messages on Instagram with questions that you'd like to see answered potentially. And yeah, stay tuned for all of that content. If you're listening far into the future, please still keep sending me messages with questions and topics you'd like to see me cover, because I'm always on the lookout and I'm always on the hunt for more stuff to cover. I'm 80 episodes in now. There's only so many things I can talk about before I start to go, what other juice could I possibly squeeze out of this lemon? So yeah, thanks for listening to another episode of Self-Made. We are now 20 episodes away from the big 100, and I'm feeling more pumped than ever. So let's get it, and I'll talk to you next time.